What does it sound like when a monster dies? Not like in the movies. There's no music. No slow-motion fall. Just the wet thud of his body hitting the kitchen floor, and the drip 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 of blood curling around the shattered wedding photo. That sound, it lives inside me now. It follows me into every quiet moment. It's louder than his yelling ever was. The clock had just blinked 2:03 a.m. The house felt like a tomb. So still, so thick with something I couldn't name. Not fear. Not exactly. More like expectation. The kind of silence that always came before the slap, before the apologies that tasted like poison, before I'd patch myself up with trembling hands and drugstore concealer. But that night felt different. The air was thicker, hungrier. I lay still, pretending to sleep, my body a live wire under the sheets. His arm was slung across my waist, heavy, like death. Even in sleep, he clung to me, possessive, controlling. The hammer I'd hidden under my pillow pressed against my thigh. A secret, promise. Then came the creak of the bed frame, the stench of bourbon, sweat. His fingers dug into my hip, testing. I didn't move. I knew the rules. If I stirred, he'd say I was awake. If I stayed still, he'd find another reason. And then, where's my fucking dinner? The first slap came before I even breathed. 6 years ago, he kissed my knuckles under a motel moon and said, "I'll never hurt you." Now, his wedding ring split my lip open like it had a score to settle. I used to count the slaps. 3 for burning the toast. 5 for smiling at the neighbor. 7 for being too tired. But the numbers blurred after year 2. That night, I think the ice had melted in his whiskey. That was enough. He backed me into the kitchen. I pressed my spine against the fridge. Arms crossed, ribs aching, trying to hold myself together from the inside out. He laughed when I flinched, veins bulging, eyes black. He looked thrilled. Behind him on the counter, the knife, always just out of reach, always gleaming like a dare. And then, a click, the sound that changed everything. The gun safe. He froze. So did I, because he never showed me the code. He never thought I'd find the key. But wives learn things, quiet things, dangerous things. He turned. "You gonna shoot me, princess?" He laughed like it was a joke, like I was still the girl who cried and begged. But I wasn't crying. My hand shook. My finger found the trigger. Second 1, he laughed. Second 3. My heart felt like it might break its cage. Second 7, he saw it. The truth. That I wasn't bluffing. That I wasn't his anymore. Second 10. The gun exploded. He jerked. Twice. Then, still. The gun dropped from my hands. The floor felt far away. His blood crept across the tiles, reaching for my bare feet. No more slaps. No more promises. No more pretending. I stared at the man who once taught me how to fear, and all I could think was, the quiet is so much louder than he ever was. How do you explain a murder when your voice won't even shake? The phone was so heavy in my hand, like I was holding the weight of everything that had ever happened. His blood was still hitting the tile. Drip, drip, drip. The same rhythm his fists used on my ribs last Tuesday. The dispatcher's voice crackled through. 911. What's your emergency? I didn't blink. Didn't breathe. I just shot my husband. Silence. A beat. Then, "Ma'am, is the scene secure?" I looked at his body. He was still there, mouth open mid-scream, frozen like a statue of everything I'd survived. It was almost funny. He always hated when I talked back. Now he couldn't say a word. They found me on the kitchen floor, cross-legged, still in his oversized shirt. My knees were stained red. Not mine. His. They kept looking at my hands. Gunpowder on the right one. No cuts. No bruises. Not that night. But inside me, I was nothing but fractures. They didn't notice the way my fingertip kept tracing the bullet hole in the wall behind him. Counting something. Maybe the years. Maybe the times I said, "It's okay," when it never was. The neighbors lied. Mrs. Langley clutched her pearls for the cameras. I heard arguing. Then laughter, she said. But it didn't sound right. It was animal. She left out the real things, like the crying she'd heard through our paper walls, like when she watched him kick our dog so hard it limped through Christmas. But no one ever wants to interfere in someone else's marriage. Later, the forensic report said there were 3 shots. 1 bullet lodged in the wall, 2 missing from the chamber, 3 shots heard, but only 1 in him. So, where did the 3rd bullet go? They never found it. But if they'd looked, the backyard oak tree had a new scar, right at shoulder height. The angle was strange, like it was fired before he fell, not after. They don't know I used to shoot for sport in college. Back then, I could hit a bullseye blindfolded. So the real question is, was the first bullet a warning? Or was I just remembering how it felt to aim and mean it? The 911 recording still haunts me. Is he breathing? No. The dog barked 2 streets over. The ice maker clicked behind me like it didn't care someone just died. Did he hurt you tonight? He always hurts me. That was the truth. Always present. Always hidden. They said the coroner found things. 3 old fractures. Ribs. Wrist. Nose. His autopsy. Cirrhosis. Cocaine in his blood. And a faded bite mark on his forearm. That last one, they traced it to our honeymoon. He joked about owning me. I laughed. Until he gripped too hard. Until I bit back. I think that was the first time I realized. I was never really his wife. I was just his possession. There's one flashback I can't forget. In the mirror, a year ago, his hands circling my throat. If you ever leave, I'll make it look like suicide. And me? I looked at myself in the glass. Eyes wide. No tears. Just a girl already grieving herself. Later, in the station, the detective slid a cup of coffee toward me. Steam rose like breath from a dying man. She said, "You know we have to ask." I looked straight at her. "Ask whatever you want." I told her. I stopped being afraid of questions the night I ran out of tears. The husband's secret first marriage. The jury that doubted her too calm voice. The anniversary letters that still arrive. Just say the word. I'll twist the knife where it hurts. Thought for a couple of seconds. What's the correct amount of tears to shed for a man who made you bleed? They sketch me in quick, heavy strokes. Lips pressed tight, hands folded like a prayer, hollows under my eyes dark as confession. The jury watches me more than the evidence. They're waiting for me to crack. They don't know I've practiced this expression for years. I don't crack. I learned how to hold a face like armor. The prosecutor lifts the gun with gloved hands and smiles for the cameras. This gun was purchased by the defendant 6 months ago. Premeditation, ladies and gentlemen. He doesn't tell them the receipt was dated the day after he broke my nose for smirking. He doesn't tell them I paid in cash, sunglasses on, humming under my breath to drown out the ringing in my ears. Small details that look like guilt in a folder look like survival to me. My lawyer plays the voicemail. His voice snarls through the speakers. "You forget who owns you? Wait till I get home, bitch." 3 jurors flinch. 1 woman, a faded bruise under her concealer, stops taking notes and looks away. Some things don't need captions. Some survivors recognize each other without words. There was a pale woman sitting in row 6 who watched me like a mirror. Later someone would say she'd been his first wife. She fell down the stairs in 2009. Miscarriage, they said. She kept a pepper spray keychain shaped like a wedding band. When our eyes met that day, she mouthed something I will never forget. "Thank you." The forensic psychiatrist read her textbook into the room. She exhibits signs of battered woman syndrome. The prosecutor cut him off with a question they always use like a blade. She took firearms training 2 weeks before the shooting. Does that sound helpless to you? They wanted a label that fit their story. I had a training course that taught me to aim center mass. He aimed for places the bruises wouldn't show. Different kinds of survival require different weapons. Mrs. Langley cried on the stand. "I should have called someone when I heard the thumping noises," she said. Her voice crumbled, and for a second the whole room felt the weight of things people ignore. The judge's glare said it all. "It is now your business." The missing bullet became theater. Defense claimed I fired a warning shot into the oak tree. The ballistics expert said the tree's entry was at a downward angle, like someone was standing over something. People whispered. Theories grew legs. I wanted to tell them I'd practiced at targets in college, that I knew how bullets moved. But even expertise can be read as intent. When they begged me for details about that night, I refused their script. I gave them Thanksgiving instead. He made me eat soap for under-seasoning the turkey, I said. When I threw up, I touched the scar at my hairline. The ER called it a doorframe accident. They always do. A juror ran to the hallway and was sick. It's a small, ugly victory when someone else's stomach turns. Then the verdict. Cameras flashing like lightning. Faces blurred by bulbs. Not guilty. My lawyer hugged me. The first wife mouthed thank you from the gallery. Relief and dread braided together in my chest. That night, in the bathroom, I finally screamed. Into the same towel I once used to muffle the sound of his fists. The sound tore something open that had been stitched shut for years. They called it justice. I called it complicated. I left the courthouse with paper in my hands and a new kind of weight in my ribs. Freedom tied to the memory of what I'd been forced to do to survive. If you want the epilogue, I can tell you about the letters that came later, the volunteer work I started at the shelter, and the way the oak tree kept its scar like a secret. Tell me where to twist the knife one last time. The dispatcher asked me if he was breathing. I said no. In the background, a dog barked 2 streets over. She asked if he was awake. I said no. She told me to check if his chest was rising. I said no. She asked if I could do CPR. I said no. She said she was going to teach me. I followed her voice, pressing hard and fast just like she said. She asked again if his chest was rising. I said no. She told me to keep going and asked how old he was. I said 40. She asked if anyone else was with me. I said no. I told her he was fine before. We had dinner. He even laughed. She asked if I was pressing hard enough. I said yes, but it wasn't working. How many women has this house buried? The realtor's smile falters as she taps the sold sign into the front yard. The young couple beside her doesn't notice how the oak tree's shadow stretches toward the kitchen window, like it's reaching for something. They don't know about the dark stain under the new linoleum, or that the master bedroom door still sticks from where he kicked it shut every night. I watch from my car down the block. This is the first time I've been back since the trial. The gun is in my glove compartment, just in case. Thursday nights, I teach firearm safety in a church basement. The women call me Sarge, never asking about the scar above my eyebrow or why I insist on checking their stances from behind, so they'll never flinch at a touch. Tonight's lesson: aim for the sternum, even if you're crying, even if your hands shake. One student, a girl of 19 with a split lip, whispers, "Did it feel good when you killed him?" The silence could curdle milk. I say, "It felt quiet." Every May 12th, our anniversary, a prison-issued envelope arrives. Year 1, you're still my wife in God's eyes. Year 2, I dream about the oak tree. What did you bury there? Year 3, a photo of my old house. Red ink circles the tree. I burn them all, but ash has a way of sticking to your fingers. Moonlight turns the bark silver. The shovel bites into earth where roots twist like knuckles. What I unearth: a child's mitten, not mine. A dog collar with Lucky stamped in flaking gold. And 3 bullet casings, not 2. The cops only ever found 2 shots fired. But I remember the 3rd, aimed at the ceiling as he lunged. A warning that became a death sentence when he laughed. The wife texts her sister, "Babe, you'll never believe what was carved into our closet door." Photo attached. Tiny tally marks. 347 of them. One for every time the neighbors heard a thud but didn't call. We meet at a diner. She slides a napkin across the table. A sketch of the oak tree with coordinates. He took me there on our first date. Said it was special. She wasn't the first. Won't be the last. When I clean the weapon post-class, I notice the serial number has been filed off. It's not the same gun from the trial. The original is buried 6 feet under the oak tree, along with every lie I told on the stand. Not of his fists, Not of the gunshot, but of the moment after, when I knelt beside him, watched his pupils dilate, and realized no one would ever hurt me again, and how terrifying that felt. I plant a sapling in the shelter's backyard. The girls ask what kind it is. Oak, I say, patting the soil. They live for centuries. One child, maybe 8, with a fading bruise on her wrist, presses her ear to the thin trunk. It's singing, she declares. They laugh. But I know the truth. Some silences are so deep, they sound like music. What do you call a woman who outlives 2 husbands? The reporter leans across the diner booth, voice dripping with faux sympathy. Survivor glitters in her headline notes. But I, the real first wife, stir my coffee with a serrated smile. The spoon clinks like a cell door. You call her thorough, I say. Some silences aren't meant to be broken. The new owners renovating the kitchen scream when the crowbar cracks open a hollow space. Inside, Polaroids of 6 women, including me and her. A ledger with dates crossed out in red. A pearl earring crusted in something brown. The cold case detective will later match it to a missing waitress from 2007. She tracks down my old blog, long abandoned. The last post went up the night before the shooting. Post title: How to Make a Monster Afraid. Password hint: What did he call us? The answer: bitches. The post: Blueprints of the house. A red X marks the oak tree. Ballistics confirm the murder weapon was used in a 2010 gas station robbery. The robber? A woman in a blonde wig, my natural hair color. The alibi? I was at a battered women's shelter 3 states away. Funny how trauma makes for airtight alibis. Flashback to 3 months before the shooting. I handed her the gun. He'll never stop. Unless you make him. She shook. I can't. I cocked the hammer. You will. And when you do, plant something pretty over it. Cut to present day. The oak tree's roots have split open a buried duffel bag. Inside, his missing wedding ring and a vial of atropine. The sweet old lady who runs it was his mother. She knew about the abuse. She funded the shelter after her own husband's hunting accident. Her office wall displays 7 graduation photos of women who moved on. All 7 later married violent men. All 7 are now widows. She shows up to class with a black eye and a news article. Local man dies in apparent suicide. Gun found in mouth. I whisper, did it feel quiet? She smiles. It felt like you taught me. The prison envelope contains a single oak leaf and 3 words. We're all free. The brother hanged himself that morning. Guards said he was humming. I plant the leaf in the sapling soil. The little girl from the shelter watches, then gasps. The tree's crying. Sure enough, sap drips down the thin bark like amber tears. The women kneel in the dirt, pressing palms to the earth as if feeling for a heartbeat. And maybe it's the wind, maybe it's ghosts, but the leaves shudder like a chorus of sighs. What do you call a woman who has spent a lifetime both creating and destroying monsters? I sit in my rocking chair on the shelter's porch, my gnarled fingers tracing the rim of a teacup that hasn't held tea in years. Inside, it's stained the deep brown of dried blood. You call her guilty, I whisper to the wind, and the wind whispers back. The detective flips through the crumbling pages, his flashlight trembling. The dates go back 50 years. The names all women. My handwriting. My victims. My instructions. One passage stands out. A boy learns violence from his father. But a girl. She wasn't just another victim. She learns survival from her mother. She was my daughter. The one I had taught, groomed, prepared, to make sure the cycle never repeated. Beneath the shelter's newest oak sapling, the ground is disturbed. The little girl with the bruised wrist doesn't need a shovel to know what's buried there. She already knows. I made him what he was, just as my mother made my husband, just as her mother made hers. A pause. Then, but I also made her, the first wife, my daughter, and she was stronger than I ever was. It was never about saving women. It was about arming them. Self-defense classes, firearm training, legal workshops, and, when necessary, A network of alibis. She presses her ear to the newest oak tree. It's singing, she says again. But this time the women don't laugh. This time we listen. A single line. The trees remember everything. I die quietly in my sleep. The little girl plants a seed in my palm before they bury me. And somewhere, deep in the roots of the oldest oak tree, something like justice finally takes hold. What sound does a dying legacy make? The wind howls through the shelter's oldest oak tree, its branches scraping against the window like skeletal fingers. I press my palm to the bark and listen. It sounds like a hammer cocking, I whisper, and the tree agrees. I found her journal tucked under the mattress. The final entry read, I thought I was breaking the cycle, but all I did was give it new teeth. Beneath it, a list, 12 names, 12 dates, 12 graves. One for every woman who graduated from the shelter and later buried a husband. Package arrived with no return address. Inside, a rusted wedding ring. A Polaroid of a young boy, him, age 7, already glaring. A note. Some seeds need to burn before they grow. I stood over a fresh plot of earth, a shovel in one hand and a gun in the other. The man at my feet sobbed. Please. I cocked the hammer. Shoo. The trees are listening. We didn't just learn to shoot. We learned how to bury a body so the earth accepts it. Which flowers bloom best over shallow graves. Why oak trees hide secrets better than tombs. My first lesson? Always plant something living where something evil died. The Vanishing, 12 missing men linked to secretive women's shelter. The editor killed the story. His wife, a graduate of the shelter, smiled over his shoulder as he hit delete. They found my brother's cell empty. On the bed, a single oak leaf and a bullet casing. The security footage showed nothing but static. But if you listen closely, you can hear humming. Now I am the matriarch of the shelter, and I extend a hand to you. Subscribe to the Veil, I whisper. Some truths grow best in darkness. The camera pulls back. The shelter's lights glow like fireflies. The oaks sway in a wind that smells like gunpowder and lilacs. And if you listen very, very closely, you can hear the creak of a rocking chair on the porch. Empty, but not for long. Gothic justice. The trees as both witnesses and accomplices. Generational retribution. The daughters who became the monster's monsters. The ultimate twist. You are now part of the Veil. This is the end. Or is it just the beginning? Subscribe to the Veil of Secrets. Some stories don't end. They root. Deciduous tree. But if you really can't let go, check the shadows. The first wife left something for you there. Good night, survivor. Kitchen knife.